on Monday, you've got to pick yourself up, and it can grind you down in ways.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just wait a minute.
And then just keep denial.
I'm not quite used to this system of recording films yet. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Wednesday afternoon. The next lesson is due to go up on display tomorrow. Now, as you might know, those of you who look at this sort of stuff, I try and reply to the discussion that I've had in the previous week in a weekly broadcast. It saves me doing all that horrible typing. That's the idea anyway. But sadly, I've got to tell you that the only discussion I have to reply to this week comes from my correspondent Sarah in Stepping Hill. Well done, Sarah. Once again, you've contributed something to the discussion. Where are the rest of yous? So let's just start off with some of the questions that I had. The difference between complete heart block and trifascicular block is axis deviation. That's correct. Axis deviation, an awful difficult thing to explain. And what I'm going to do in this reply is to put out to you a link to a YouTube film that I made about how to detect a cheap and cheerful way of detecting axis deviation. I'm not going to boast about it. It wouldn't impress a cardiologist, but it works if you want to impress student nurses. And I put this thing on YouTube. And I got an email back from someone saying thank you for putting that up. Some medical student in America who said thank you for reminding me about that message, which I took to be a compliment in one sense, but in another sense, I took it to be you can't teach a medical student anything because he made out he really knew it already. Well, maybe. So, intracardiac shunts, yes, a defect in the septum. I wonder how many of you have seen intracardiac shunts as a result of septal wall defects resulting from myocardial infarctions. These are a really, really serious complication. If you blow a hole in your intraventricular septum, then the outlook for you is pretty grim, really. Unless they can get you almost immediately to a surgical centre, and even if they do get you to a surgical centre, the fact that the hole in your heart has an edge to it which is necrotic and badly damaged can mean that, really speaking, it's time to go. It's not much to stitch onto, not much to fashion any sort of blocking device, and it's a terrible complication too because it doesn't happen right at the time of the infarct necessarily, but it comes at that midpoint before scar tissue is built up, but after clot has plugged the gap, if you see what I mean. So it's at the weakest part, and some of the most tragic cases of intracardiac collapse like this have been where people are almost getting ready for home. Everything's gone okay. They're back on the ward. They're getting ready for home. Next thing, this weak point in their intraventricular septum blows through, and they collapse on the spot. Not common, but the first student of mine that ever got published on the subject of a chap who blew one of these holes in an intraventricular septum and was rushed over to the local cardiothoracic centre and had the thing successfully repaired. I was astonished. I was absolutely astonished because he went overclapped out, and to make a comeback from that is really, really impressive. Sarah's also described the last patient with cardiogenic shock that she saw due to self-neglect. I wonder to what extent this was self-neglect. You'd know better than me, but we talk. Self-neglect usually means that you can't be bothered getting a bath and he lets his toenails grow out of order. But this reads to me more like the fellow was sick and he couldn't drink I mean, mostly people who pretty much self-neglect, don't shave and don't have a bath for months, they can still drink. If you can't drink, you wonder, is that self-neglect or can't look after yourself? Acopia. But anyway, potassium more than 10. My God. Was he getting peaked T-waves, I wonder? Urea more than 200. Creatinine off the scale. Blood pressure, hypertensive, no urine output, and not surprisingly, dead within 36 hours. Tragedy. Incidentally, while I'm looking at that defect in the septum, blood mixes from the left and the right hand side of the heart, but of course, knowing our physiology as we do, by and large the blood goes from the left hand side to the right hand side and sort of swirls around in a circular motion. But a shunt, intracardiac shunt. The other place that people talk about shunts is on renal patients' arms, isn't it? Where the renal patient will have an artery that gets wired up to a vein for dialysis purposes. Yeah. Okay, I want to call it a day there. Nobody's answered any of the stuff that I sent out, but you naughty nurses. But you're going to have to start thinking about your essays soon. I've put a couple up there for you to take a look at. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your subjects are. And be thinking about publication. I want to see as many people on my courses get published as possible. So pick an unusual subject, something that is going to appeal to an editor, and start thinking now about getting double the value of your essay by getting it in print as well. Believe me, nothing feels as good as in front of your mates as having an article appear in the Nursing Standard. So you think on about that. And get talking back to me, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye everyone.